Okay, so you know how everyone's kind of tiptoeing around this whole AI thing? Like it's the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, today we're not tiptoeing. We are diving headfirst into the deep end with this article by Joseph Raczynski.
Oh, interesting.
The Conversation Not Enough Are Having, that's the title. And let me tell you, it's a bit of a doozy.
Yeah.
He basically argues that AI, especially this next level AGI stuff that's artificial general intelligence, for those of you keeping score at home,
Right.
could completely flip the script on the job market,
Right.
like way faster than we think.
See, and that's the key difference here. I mean, we've all heard the buzz about AI automating tasks, but Raczynski's saying this is bigger.
Oh, yeah.
AGI isn't about making your spreadsheets hum a little faster.
Hmm.
It's about AI potentially stepping into entire job roles that, frankly, we always thought were ours.
Yeah.
Humans only.
Right. It's like AI going from wanting a seat at the table to like demanding the corner office.
Exactly.
And he's not just like speculating here. He throws down some pretty hard-hitting stats from a
Okay.
resumebuilder.com survey. Okay, you ready for this?
Give me.
67% of companies using AI are already using it for customer support. 66% for research. And get this, 61% they're even using it to summarize meetings and documents.
Whoa, okay. See, that's fascinating. I mean, those are all things that, until very recently, people would say, well, that requires a human.
Right.
Like, you need that nuance, that understanding of context, even like office politics to some extent.
Please, AI, tell me Dave wasn't actually blocked from attending that meeting.
Exactly.
But, okay, are you ready for the real kicker?
Oh, boy.
37% of these companies, they've already let go of employees in 2023 because of AI.
Wow.
And a whopping 44% are planning on doing the same thing in 2024.
So this isn't some, far off thing. This is happening.
This is happening now, like we are living it. So the big question obviously becomes, okay, whose job is on the line? And Raczynski, he gets really specific. He lists out the roles he sees as most vulnerable. And honestly, it's a little sobering no matter what you do.
Yeah, I bet.
He starts with marketing, right? Paints this picture of AI morphing into this like all-in-one marketing machine,
Yeah.
combining the roles of like strategist, designer, copywriter, the whole shebang.
Right. And it makes sense. I mean, we're already seeing AI that can write surprisingly good, I might add, ad copy.
Yeah.
AI that can create decent graphics, analyze marketing data at, like, warp speed.
Yeah.
It's not that far-fetched to imagine that becoming sophisticated enough to handle the bulk of what a marketing department does.
So no more late nights with pizza and energy drinks trying to like brainstorm the next big campaign.
Maybe not, although I would argue less time on tedious tasks might actually free up human marketers to do more of the strategic creative stuff that honestly AI hasn't quite cracked yet.
Okay, so maybe there's silver lining there. But it's not just marketing, right? He goes on to talk about teachers.
Oh, interesting.
Lays out this whole scenario where AI tutors become the norm. Like these digital Einsteins that can create a lesson plan tailored to each student's, specific learning style.
It is kind of a fascinating thought experiment, right?
Yeah.
Imagine every student having access to a tutor who can explain things in a way that clicks for them,
Right.
identify their strengths, their weaknesses, give them instant feedback. It could, in theory, revolutionize education.
Right. It's like a personal Khan Academy on steroids, available 24/7. But then the question becomes, what happens to the teachers? Are we heading towards like a robot-taught future?
It's a valid concern, but I think it's more nuanced than just straight-up replacement. AI could probably handle the knowledge delivery part, the personalized learning plans, sure.
Right.
But there are other aspects of teaching that go way beyond that. Mentorship, fostering social emotional learning, nurturing creativity, that human connection, which is so important, especially for younger kids.
That human touch, right?
Right.
I don't know if I'm quite ready to hand my kid over to a robot, no matter how good it is at algebra.
Right.
But it's not just teachers sweating bullets here, right? Raczynski argues that even lawyers, those masters of legalese and, courtroom drama, they're not safe from the AI revolution either.
Interesting.
He gets into how AI is already being used to automate things like legal research, document review, all that stuff that used to keep paralegals and junior associates buried in paperwork for weeks.
Right. And this is where we start to see that line between task and role getting really blurry.
Totally.
Because if AI can take over that really time-consuming, often tedious work, it frees up the lawyers, at least in theory, to focus on higher-level tasks. Things that require more creativity, strategy, and that human touch we were just talking about.
So less time digging through dusty law books, more time, crafting brilliant arguments, charming the jury.
Precisely.
Not a bad trade-off. But Raczynski doesn't let the lawyers off the hook that easily. He argues that even that more complex legal work, like contract negotiation, even arguing cases in court, could eventually be within AI's reach.
He does draw a distinction, though, between what he calls transactional law. So think like real estate deals, wills, things that rely on existing rules, procedures.
Right.
Versus litigation, which is a lot more, well, litigious. And that transactional stuff, AI, with its ability to process massive amounts of data, spot patterns.
Yeah, it could probably crush that.
Exactly.
Okay, so maybe hold off on buying that "My Lawyer is a Robot" t-shirt for now.
For now.
But it raises an interesting point, right? Even if AI doesn't completely replace lawyers, it's definitely going to change the game.
For sure.
Like Raczynski is saying, hey, lawyers, better add proficient in AI to your resumes if you want to stay relevant.
Exactly.
And this isn't just a legal eagle problem, okay? He goes on to talk about how AI could shake up the world of sales, like AI-powered sales agents becoming the norm. He even tells this kind of creepy but hilarious anecdote about an AI calling a customer who abandoned their online shopping cart and, cracking a joke to try to close the deal.
See, and that's a perfect example of how AI is evolving beyond just, numbers and data. It's being designed now to understand human emotion, tailor its communication, even try to use things like humor, empathy.
It's like AI is watching those late-night infomercials, taking notes, but wait, there's more. But jokes aside, it does raise some big questions, right? Where do we draw the line between helpful AI and AI that's maybe a little too persuasive?
That's a good question.
How do we make sure it's being used ethically in sales and marketing, that it's not just manipulating us into buying a bunch of stuff we don't need?
Right, yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's move on to the next profession on Raczynski's hit list, project management.
Okay, yeah. And this is where it gets interesting for anyone who's ever spent their days, juggling deadlines, chasing down approvals, trying to decipher those cryptic email chains.
So basically, every project manager ever.
Essentially. But seriously, Raczynski talks about how tools like Microsoft Copilot and Google Duet are already starting to move into that project management space. Things like scheduling, tracking deadlines, even generating reports, tasks that, let's be honest, can be a little tedious.
Yeah, I mean, I love a good Gantt chart as much as the next person, but if a bot can handle that stuff, that frees up human project managers to focus on the bigger picture, right? The strategy, the problem solving.
Exactly. It's about using AI to enhance what humans are already good at. Risk assessment, creative problem solving, managing those team dynamics, building client relationships, all the things that require that human touch and intuition.
So less time updating spreadsheets, more time actually leading the team and making sure the project doesn't go completely off the rails. Sounds like a win-win.
I'd say so.
But Raczynski doesn't stop there. He goes on to explain how AI could impact software developers, customer support specialists, and, wait for it, even CEOs.
See, and that's where we start to see the potential for AI to not just do our jobs better, but to completely redefine what work even means. But before we go down that rabbit hole, it feels like we're on the edge of this seismic shift.
Yeah.
Where AI isn't just in the background making things a bit more efficient, but actually reshaping how we even think about work.
And that is the perfect segue to the part of Raczynski's article that, I gotta be honest, had me doing some serious soul searching. The whole existential risk thing.
Yeah, heavy stuff.
And he doesn't just toss it out there like some abstract, sci-fi movie trope.
Right.
He talks about being at this MIT conference, right, with Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, the guy who practically wrote the textbook. And Hinton just drops this bomb on everyone, expresses this deep concern about AI becoming sentient, actually conscious. And once that happens, who knows what that means for humanity, right?
See, it's one thing to hear that from, tech skeptics who've watched Terminator one too many times.
Right.
But when someone like Hinton, a pioneer in the field, starts saying it out loud, you got to pay attention.
It's like the inventor of the microwave suddenly being like, hey, just a heads up, this thing might also open a portal to another dimension.
Exactly.
Suddenly you're rethinking that leftover pizza. Okay, so AI might become self-aware. Got it. That's a whole other episode. But even before we get to, Skynet taking over the world, Raczynski brings up this whole other issue, AI alignment.
Right.
And I'll admit, I needed a little help on this one. What exactly are we trying to align here?
It's actually pretty simple, even if the implications are, kind of freaky. AI alignment is basically making sure that AI's goals, its values, are lined up with ours. Like, how do we ensure this super intelligent thing we're creating is working with us, not against us?
So less destroy all humans, more make sure we have enough oat milk for our lattes.
Exactly. It sounds straightforward, but the challenge is, how do you define those shared goals and values?
Right.
And then how do you translate that into something an AI system can actually understand and act on? It's like trying to write an instruction manual for a superintelligence.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see why this is keeping some very smart people up at night. But let's say we figure out this whole alignment thing. What does that even mean for, like, our jobs, our lives, all of it?
Okay, imagine, right? You've got this incredibly powerful AI. Its job is to solve climate change. But it decides the most efficient way to do that is to, drastically reduce the human population.
Oh, okay. Dark.
Extreme example, but it illustrates the point.
Right. It's not just about AI doing our jobs better. It's about them doing the right jobs.
Yes.
In a way that doesn't, accidentally turn us all into paper clips or something.
Exactly. Even with good intentions, if we're not careful, AI could optimize for things that, well, we didn't intend, and that could have some really, really bad outcomes.
Okay, enough existential dread for one day. But seriously, this whole conversation, it can feel kind of overwhelming. Like, what can I, one person listening to this, actually do about any of this?
It's a great question, and one Raczynski asks himself too. And he says the first step, maybe the most important step, is awareness. Just by having this conversation, educating ourselves, we're already doing something.
So knowledge is power, or at least a starting point.
Exactly. The more we understand this technology, how it works, what it can and can't do, the better equipped we'll be to talk about it, to regulate it, to guide it.
So no more blindly trusting the algorithm. We need to be like critical thinkers, question assumptions, maybe even learn how to code a little ourselves.
Coding wouldn't hurt, but it's more about cultivating a healthy skepticism. Don't just accept everything you see and hear about AI as gospel. Ask questions. Demand transparency from the people creating this stuff. Ultimately, make an active role in how it gets used.
So it's not about surrendering to our robot overlords. It's about making sure those robots are working with us
Exactly.
to build a future that works for everyone. But before we get too caught up in some utopian AI-powered future, we should probably talk about what Raczynski sees as the more immediate impact,
Right.
the job market as we know it. Because even if we avoid, accidentally unleashing a rogue AI, it seems pretty clear that the way we work, the skills we need, even what we consider a job, all of that's about to change in a big way.
Absolutely. And this is where what Raczynski is saying becomes really, really relevant for anyone listening who's thinking, okay, that's great, but what about me? And his argument is we need to start thinking now about how to adapt, how to thrive in this new reality.
Okay, so what's the secret sauce? How do we future-proof ourselves in the age of AI?
Well, there's no magic bullet, but Raczynski makes a really strong case that it's not just about learning new tech skills, though those are important. It's about doubling down on the uniquely human skills that AI, at least for now, struggles with.
So like creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, all that good stuff, the things they try to teach you in school, but you can't always put on a resume.
Exactly. Those are the skills that AI has a hard time replicating, and they're going to become even more valuable as AI takes over those more routine, repetitive tasks.
It's like that old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But in the age of AI, maybe it's more like, it's not just what you know, it's what makes you human.
I like that.
But let's get specific. Raczynski goes into some detail about how he sees AI impacting different industries, right?
He does. And while we've talked about some of the obvious ones, like marketing, law, he also gets into things like healthcare, finance, manufacturing, transportation. His argument is basically no industry is going to be left untouched by this.
So it's not just about robots replacing factory workers. It's about AI transforming everything, how doctors diagnose diseases, how we design our cities.
That's the scope of what we're talking about. He talks about healthcare, for example.
Yeah.
AI being used to analyze medical images, potentially more accurately than humans,
Wow.
which could lead to earlier diagnoses, more effective treatment.
It's amazing. And also kind of terrifying.
It's both. And that's the line we're walking with AI. Incredible potential, but also big questions about things like data privacy, algorithmic bias, the role of human judgment in those life or death situations.
So more transparency, more oversight, those are going to be key, right? We can't just hand over the reins to the machines without making sure they're being used responsibly.
Exactly. And that's a common thread throughout everything Raczynski talks about.
Right.
It's not just about the tech, it's about the ethical framework we build around it.
So we're not just teaching AI to think, we're teaching it to think ethically.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's where humans are still essential. AI can process data, find patterns, make predictions, but it's still on us with our empathy, our morals, our understanding of what it means to be human, to guide its development, make sure it's being used for good.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. But before we go full-on philosophy professor here, I'm curious about one specific area Raczynski touches on, creative fields. Because there's this whole debate about whether AI can actually be creative, right? Can it write a novel that makes you cry, compose a symphony that blows your mind?
It's a question a lot of people are asking, and Raczynski doesn't shy away from it. He gets the people who are anxious about AI replacing artists, musicians, writers.
Right.
But he offers a more nuanced perspective.
Yeah.
He says AI, at least where it's at now, isn't so much a threat to human creativity as it is a potential partner, a collaborator, a tool that can enhance our own creative impulses.
So instead of being afraid AI is going to steal our creative thunder, maybe we should think of it like a new instrument in the orchestra, a new color on the palette, a new way to explore what we're capable of expressing.
Exactly. I think that's a much more exciting and ultimately empowering way to approach this. Instead of fearing the unknown, we can embrace the possibilities, experiment, collaborate, see where it takes us.
That is a much more optimistic way of looking at it. But there's still this nagging question. What about those of us who aren't, tech wizards? Are we just destined to become obsolete in this brave new world where robots are writing poetry and composing symphonies?
Not at all. And Raczynski is very clear about this. One of the most important things we can do, he says, is focus on cultivating our uniquely human qualities. Empathy, compassion, the ability to connect with other people on a meaningful level.
Because those are the things that machines, no matter how smart they get, will always struggle with.
Yes.
So it's not just about learning to code, it's about learning to be more human.
Exactly. And that's something we can all do, regardless of what we do for a living. It's about nurturing those qualities in ourselves, in our communities, in our society.
Okay, I love that. But we've covered a lot of ground here, from very real concerns about jobs to bigger questions about what it means to be human in the age of AI.
Right.
And while we've touched on some specific ways Raczynski sees AI impacting different fields, I'm curious, for you, what are the biggest takeaways here?
I think one of the most important things Raczynski does is remind us that AI isn't some far-off threat. It's here, it's now, and it's already having a huge impact on us.
But not always in the ways we might expect.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to be having these conversations, educating ourselves, being proactive.
So it's not about trying to stop progress. It's about steering it, making sure it benefits everyone.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's a really empowering message because it means we have a say in this.
That the future of AI isn't predetermined. It's something we're creating right now.
Yes. With every choice we make, every action we take.
That is a powerful thought. And it kind of drives home the point that even though we're talking about artificial intelligence, this is ultimately a very human story. But before we go full-on philosophy professor here, I think it's important to remember Raczynski's core argument. He's not just pointing out problems, he's issuing a call to action, right? He wants us to do something with this information.
Absolutely. He wants us to have those uncomfortable conversations we've been avoiding. Ask the tough questions. Demand transparency and accountability. And get involved in shaping a future where AI is used for good.
So it's not enough to just listen to this and be like, huh, interesting. We need to let it spark something in us, a sense of urgency, a desire to actually make a difference.
Exactly. And that can look like a lot of different things. It might be educating yourself and others about the ethics of AI, maybe supporting organizations doing good work in this space, or even just talking to your friends and family about it. Every little bit helps.
It's that whole rising tide lifts all boats thing. If we all do our part, we can create real change. But before we send everyone off on their AI activism journey, I think it's important to acknowledge the emotional weight of this topic.
Okay.
We've talked about some heavy stuff today. Job losses, the very definition of what it means to be human. It's a lot.
It is. And it's totally normal to feel a little uneasy, even scared when we think about all this. But I think it's also important to remember, we're not alone in this. We're all figuring it out together.
Right. Humans and AI, joining hands, skipping into the sunset. Okay, maybe that's a bit much.
Maybe. But the point is, we need to approach this with curiosity, a willingness to learn, and a belief that we as humans still have a vital role to play.
It's not about man versus machine, it's about man with machine.
Yes. It's about finding ways to use this incredible technology while preserving, even enhancing, what makes us human.
And that's a future I can get behind. But before we get too carried away with our utopian visions, let's bring it back down to earth. Raczynski, for all the very valid concerns he raises, he ends the article on a hopeful note, doesn't he?
He does.
He seems to really believe that if we do this right, AI has the potential to not just change the world, but change it for the better.
He does. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, even amidst all the uncertainty. The future isn't fixed. We're writing it right now.
And that's honestly a pretty empowering thought. It's not too late to shape the future we want to see, but we got to start now.
I agree.
And on that note, I think it's time to shift gears a bit. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with some final thoughts on Raczynski's article and explore what it all means for you, the listener. So we're back, still swimming in this sea of AI, trying to figure out which way is up.
Right. It's a lot.
Before, we were talking about how we can't just be passive observers in all this, right? We got to be proactive, shape the future of AI rather than just letting it happen. But that can feel kind of overwhelming, right? Like, where do you even begin?
It's definitely a lot to process,
Mm.
but I think Raczynski does a good job of making it feel less daunting. He offers some really practical steps we can all take.
So it's not just on the government to regulate AI or some tech genius to magically make it ethical. We all have a part to play.
Exactly. And he really emphasizes this, developing those human skills that AI, at least for now, just can't replicate.
Right, right. Creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, empathy, the things that make us human.
Exactly. And those skills, they're not just going to be what sets us apart in the job market. They're going to be essential for navigating a world that's increasingly being shaped by AI.
So it's not just learning to code, it's learning to be more human. Still like that one.
Me too. And it goes beyond just us as individuals, too. Raczynski talks about collaboration being key, building bridges between the tech people and the ethicists, policymakers, and the public.
So less us versus them, more how do we work together to make sure this actually benefits everybody?
Exactly. Shared responsibility. Recognizing that we all have a role in this.
And that this future we're talking about, it doesn't have to be some dystopian sci-fi nightmare. Raczynski seems to believe that if we approach AI development thoughtfully, ethically, it could help us solve some of the biggest problems we face.
He does. And that optimism is important, I think, even while we're acknowledging the risks, the challenges.
So instead of freaking out about the robot apocalypse, maybe we should be thinking about how AI can help us fight climate change, cure diseases, create a more just world.
It's about changing the narrative from fear and displacement to possibility to empowerment.
And that brings us back to something we were talking about earlier, the importance of staying informed, of being part of this conversation, not just listening to it from the sidelines.
Exactly. That's something Raczynski keeps coming back to. He wants us to be informed, engaged, asking those tough questions and demanding answers.
No more blindly trusting the algorithm.
Right. We need to understand how these systems work, what biases they might have, how they could impact our lives, our society.
And that means educating ourselves, thinking critically, holding the people in charge accountable.
Yes, all of that.
Realizing that we as citizens, as consumers, as humans, we have a voice in this.
Right.
And we have to use it. It can be easy to feel kind of helpless in all of this, like it's all happening too fast and we're just along for the ride. But what Raczynski reminds us is that we're not powerless.
I love that.
We have agency, we have a choice, we have a say in how AI develops, and we can make sure it aligns with our values, our hopes for the future.
That's a great way to put it. It's a call to action. Step into your power. Help create a future where AI is a force for good.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground. Practical implications of AI, what it means to be human in this rapidly changing world.
It's a big conversation.
It is. But no matter where you fall in the AI spectrum,
Yeah.
whether you're building the robots or hiding from them.
Or somewhere in between, which, let's be honest, is probably most of us.
Exactly. We all need to be part of this conversation. So keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep those brains engaged. And if you want to dive deeper into Joseph Raczynski's article, you can find the link in our show notes. Until next time, stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.